What up, players? Warboss Tay back up in this mug. Welcome to a special reward video for my patron Joe Razorwire, who's been so generous to support my studio at the $20 a month tier. And one of his rewards for being such a great patron is that he could choose any video on any topic that I normally would do, like an unboxing or a review or a ramble or anything. And he said, pretty much dealer's choice. It was whatever I wanted to make a video on. So he had no specific request, and I thought the perfect video to put as a response to that would be a video on my style and the way I use my creativity to power my projects. And so I want to talk about three pieces in particular that are just examples of the style of painting that I do and how I come up with my ideas when my imagination is allowed to roam free. So thank you, Joe Razorwire, for being one of the most prominent and important members of my Players Club. And if you'd like to join him, you can check me out on Patreon, links in the description below. So when I'm coming up with an idea for what I want to paint, how I want to build it, and what I want the overall effect of the miniature to be, I think of what the narrative is going to be with the miniatures. What do I want to convey? What do I want to show? And how do I want the person who's looking at my miniature to take it in? And what details do I want to emphasize? And what do I want to show off? And how can I use the bits in my collection and the painting techniques that I know I have a firm grasp of to show those abilities off with. So I have three things here. I've got a Chaos Rhino, but I built it almost as a diorama with a Death Watch team kind of assaulting it mid-combat. So you've got an Ultramarine here with the Ultramarine shoulder pad that's crouched and ready to blow this guy away with a melt-a-gun shot. You've got a Blood Angels assault trooper here with a melt-a-bomb that's that's waiting for the door to open so he could chuck that melt-a-bomb in. And the Rhino itself is just built as a word bearer's Rhino with a lot of script, iconography, a lot of blasphemous things all over. And this poor Ultramarine right here in the front, which I made by putting like a torso of an Ultramarine with the shoulder pads, a zombie skull or zombie head, and then just like snipping the arms at the bolter arms at the elbows, and then just leaving the torso, and then just using a lot of blood effects, some chain, hobby chain that I got from, I think, Secret Weapon or AK makes these chains that you can use that are about the same size as your miniatures. I just had a lot of fun making it. And here's a little missile launcher that can move up and down. And yeah, so the narrative of this is, of course, you've got a word bearer's Chaos Rhino, and you've got a little Death Watch team that's assaulting it. Then the narrative here that I've made for my Rubric Marines for my Thousand Suns, you might remember, is that I have a squad of Thousand Suns with the Forge World conversion bits. And my idea is that the Thousand Suns are known to be just like almost automatons. They're not actual people inside there. They're just dust inside this armor, and it's powered by their souls or something. So there's nothing really in there. They're kind of like robotic. They're mindless. And then through some spell of their Chaos Sorcerer or their General, they're starting to regain a little bit of their intelligence. They're starting to remember who they are, or maybe not who they are, but they're just starting to gain consciousness. And so this guy's kind of losing it. He's kind of going nuts, like, "Rah!" And then you've got just some interesting poses for the rest of them. And I thought, well, how can I pose them? Because all the figures are just holding bolters, right? Bolt guns. And so I just did a little bit of snipping, a little bit of green stuffing and re-gluing. And I wanted the models to look balanced. So whenever I put these guys on the field, this guy would be at one end of the squad, this guy would be somewhere near the middle, and this guy would be here off on the left, because I want my squads to look balanced and not just like a bunch, like 10 identical figures holding bolt guns. Then of course you've seen my brothers Baglump before, and all the narrative juicy bits that they've got on them with the Empire fetishes that they have, and the colors that contrast the white, specifically the blue and the red from the Altdorf color schemes. So my biggest inspiration, my biggest creative advice to give for those of you who want to build interesting narratives and interesting figures is that you think about the army you're building. You think about what their character is, or what you want the narrative of that army to be. Like, if you have an Imperial Guard army, are they fresh out of basic training, thrown into the fight before they're ready? Are they grizzled veterans that you could add like stubble to the faces? Or you could add like scuffs and bits of battle damage to them, or really, really dirty and weather up their vehicles to make it look like they've been through the ringer. And you can find great narratives in just using your imagination to fuel what you're doing. So that's it, really just a quick video to hopefully inspire you to think about your armies, think about your projects. Don't just build a model or an army the way that the White Dwarf, or the way that you've seen it in the rule books, the way that they show them to be. Be creative. Make your army your own. There is no other figure than the ones that you have. Make them special to you. Make them unique and individual to you, so that you will always know when you see that model, like, that's my rhino. If anyone ever copies it or tries to, not copies, but if anyone pulls inspiration from it, I can know that I made it, and that I shared it, and somebody was inspired to do something similar. So I hope that you are having a great time out there. There's never been a better time to start painting, and I hope you always hold yourself to a high tabletop standard. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and we'll see you in the next video. And again, thanks to Joe Razorwire for being such an awesome patron. Latest players! One more thing really quickly before I cut this video off is that the Lady Boss and I are in the midst of recording our podcast that we're going to be throwing up on Patreon. So we want to throw the call out to you. What would you like to hear the Lady Boss and I talking about, or what would you like to hear me talking about in a podcast? And just throw your ideas or your suggestions down below. We can do anything from movie, book reviews, to just rambles, or anything. Anything is kind of open game. We're trying to figure out the format of our podcast for the bi-weekly podcast we're putting up on the Patreon. And we're just looking for topics to talk about, or anything in the hobby. The Lady Boss might not be too familiar with it, so I could take over for that. And just anything you've got, throw them in the comments below. And really looking forward to getting that up online as soon as possible. Thanks again.